Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana
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 Yashodhatira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya
Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
जय नित्यलीला प्रविष्ट ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिविजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर हित श्री श्रीमती दिवान विश्ला अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी दंडी गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Savior of the whole world Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. जय नित्यलीला प्रविष्ट ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिविजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर हित श्री श्रीमती दिवान विश्ला भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय. श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय. नवदीप मायापुर धाम की जय. गंगा माई की जय. यमुना माई की जय. भक्ति देवी की जय. तुलसी देवी की जय. श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय. ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जय. ट्रांसेंडेंटल प्रसाद डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जय. सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय. ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya. Krishna Vrishta Bhutale. Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gauravani Vichara. Vishesha Sundara. Thank you very much. So it's a good thing that Radha Govind Hari Prabhu is here, because if I make any mistakes, he can correct me. Yeah, I have received much blessing from him for a long time, and I'm very grateful to him and all of you for choosing to spend your Sunday evening here at ISKCON Stouffville. We'll read from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, and today's plan will be like this. We're going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is. We'll do a quick context of chapter 6, where the chapter 6 sits. I will talk about the context of these particular verses that we are reading today. We'll dive a little bit deep into the verses themselves, and then a little bit of a discussion, and then there's questions. Questions are super important, because until we ask those questions and make that knowledge ours, in other words, until we make it relate to ourselves, that knowledge is not does not fructify in the heart. So it also helps. Some advanced devotees like to ask questions on behalf of others. It's not like they have the question, but they want that particular point to be clarified. Of course, there's also challenges, and there's also any doubts or any of that. Everything is welcome. It's a safe space, it's open space. And just as Sri Krishna was prepared to teach the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna all over again at the end, when Arjuna said, yes, I've understood everything, thank you very much, I'm going to do exactly as you say. Similarly, the same thing is in our tradition, which is that we don't, we will repeat the knowledge any number of times until it is solid in the heart. My spiritual master was told by his mentor, Vishnujan Maharaj, my spiritual master Sankarshan Prabhu, was told by his mentor that ask until your intelligence is satisfied. So, Krishna consciousness movement is meant for us to make sure that we surrender with our intelligence. We don't leave our intelligence behind. Okay, because that kind of blind following is the most dangerous thing, and such followers are extremely dangerous to everybody, including their own organization. Okay, so let's do that. Let's chant together. Everybody has a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, you can pull it up on your phone if you don't have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. But it looks like most have already. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Bhagavad Gita chapter 6. We are going to discuss verses 27 and 28 today. Prashanta Manasam
Prasanta Manasam
Yenam
Yenam
Yoginam
Yoginam
Sukhamuttamam
Sukham Uttamam
Upaiti
Upaiti
Shantarajasam
Santarajasam
Brahmabhutam
Brahmabhutam
Akalmasham
Akalmasham
Prashantamanasam Yenam
Prashantamanasam Yenam
Yoginam Sukhamuttamam
Yoginam Sukham Uttatam
Upaiti Shantarajasam
Upaiti Shantarajasam
Brahmabhutam Akalmasham
Brahmabhutam Akalmasham
Prashantamanasam Yenam
Prashantamanasam Yenam
Yoginam Sukhamuttamam
Yoginam Sukham Uttamam
Upaiti Shantarajasam
Upaiti Shantarajasam
Brahmabhutam Akalmasham
Brahmabhutam Akalmasham
Prashantamanasam Yenam
Prashantamanasam Yenam
Yoginam Sukhamuttamam
Yoginam Sukham Uttamam
Upaiti Shantarajasam
Upaiti Shantarajasam
Brahmabhutam Akalmasham.
Brahmabhutam Akalmasham.
The English translation, please also repeat. The yogi
The yogi
whose mind is fixed on me
whose mind is fixed on me
verily attains the highest perfection
verily attains the highest perfection
of transcendental happiness.
of transcendental happiness.
He is beyond the mode of passion.
He is beyond the mode of passion.
He realizes his qualitative identity
He realizes his qualitative identity
with the Supreme,
with the
and
Supreme.
thus he is freed from
Thus he is free from
all reactions to past deeds.
all reactions to past deeds.
We'll just read the translation once more and I'll read the purport, then we'll move to verse 28. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me
The yogi whose mind is fixed on me
verily attains the highest perfection
verily attains the highest perfection
of transcendental happiness.
of transcendental happiness.
He is beyond the mode of passion.
He is beyond the mode of passion.
He realizes his qualitative identity
He realizes his qualitative identity
with the Supreme,
with the Supreme.
and thus he is freed from
And thus he is freed from
all reactions
all reactions
to past deeds.
to the past deeds.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Shri
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Brahma Bhuta is the state of being free from material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. Bhagavad Gita 1854. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman, the Absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. Savai Manah Krishna Padaravindayo. To be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord or to remain in Krishna consciousness is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. We'll go to verse 28. Yunjannevam
Yunjannevam
Sadatmanam
Sadatmanam
Yogi
Yogi
Vigata Kalmashaha
Vigatakalmasha
Sukhena
Sukhena
Brahma Samsparsham
Brahma Sansparsham
Atyantam
Vatyantam
Sukhamashnute
Sukhamashnute
Yunjannevam Sadatmanam
Yunjannevam Sadatmanam
Yogi Vigata Kalmashaha
Yogi Vigatakalmasha
Sukhena Brahma Samsparsham
Sukhena Brahma Sansparsham
Atyantam Sukhamashnute
Atyantam Sukhamashnate
Yunjannevam Sadatmanam
Yunjannevam Sadatmanam
Yogi Vigata Kalmashaha
Yogi Vigatakalmasha
Sukhena Brahma Samsparsham
Sukhena Brahma Sansparsham
Atyantam Sukhamashnute.
Atyantam Sukhamashnute.
Once more. Yunjannevam Sadatmanam
Yunjannevam Sadatmanam
Yogi Vigata Kalmashaha
Yogi Vigatakalmasha
Sukhena Brahma Samsparsham
Sukhena Brahma Sansparsham
Atyantam Sukhamachnute.
Atyantam Sukhamashnute.
Thus the self-controlled yogi
Thus the self-controlled yogi,
constantly engaged in yoga practice,
constantly engaged in a yoga practice,
becomes free from all material contamination,
becomes free from all material contamination,
and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness
and achieves the highest stage of perfect
in
happiness
transcendental loving service
in transcendental loving service
to the Lord.
to the Lord.
Thus, the self-controlled yogi,
Thus the self-controlled yogi,
constantly engaged in yoga practice,
constantly engaged in a yoga practice,
becomes free from all material contamination,
becomes free from all the material contamination,
and achieves the highest stage
and achieves the highest stage
of perfect happiness
of perfect happiness
in transcendental loving service to the Lord.
in transcendental loving service to the Lord.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Self-realization means knowing one's constitutional position in relationship to the Supreme. The individual soul is part and parcel of the Supreme, and his position is to render transcendental service to the Lord. This transcendental contact with the Supreme is called Brahma Samsparsha. Om Adhyanatimiraandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadagalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, the Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, and even though it apparently feels, especially if you read other Vedic literatures, etc., that the Bhagavad Gita is extremely simple, the fundamental truth is that the Bhagavad Gita is extremely profound, and to make something simple takes a lot of skill. You know, anybody can make things complicated. It's not hard to make things complicated, right? But to make things simple takes a lot of intelligence, right? You see that in our workplaces, we see that in our public, great leaders make things simple for everybody so that people know exactly what is to be done. However, the simplicity of the Bhagavad Gita is not devoid of its profound nature. So anyone who simply studies the Bhagavad Gita sincerely, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, is sure to attain the highest truths. So when you read the other literatures, such as the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, you see that every verse in those literatures reflect back on the Bhagavad Gita. So, in fact, Srila Prabhupada said that Bhagavad Gita is sufficient. Even one chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is sufficient. Even one verse of the Bhagavad Gita is sufficient. He said one line of the purport is sufficient for us to reach perfection. So among this context of the Bhagavad Gita, you've already been studying the Bhagavad Gita step by step. So you already have a context of this. We are now in chapter 6. The Bhagavad Gita is actually divided into 3 main parts. You have the first 6 chapters, the middle 6 chapters, and the last 6 chapters. And the way it's arranged, normally in Vedic knowledge, is that, Krishna is an amazing teacher. What does an amazing teacher do? Okay? The amazing teacher, the best teachers that we meet are teachers who first come into the classroom and they tell us what they are going to tell us. They're going to say, we are going to cover this today, right? And then they go ahead and tell us in the classroom. And then when they summarize, they say, okay, this is what I have just told you. Okay, so they tell you everything 3 times. And in different times, the teacher can explain things in different levels of detail. The first time they say, they give you a summary, and then they go deep into the details, and then they summarize again in a different way, so that the student has a very strong understanding. So many great Vaishnavas have discussed that the Bhagavad Gita is divided into 3 parts. where the central 6 chapters, the chapters 7 through 12, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, are considered to be like the essence, the core of the Bhagavad Gita, and they are almost protected or built up by the chapters that come in the beginning, the first 6 chapters and the last 6 chapters. Okay? So among this, the 6th chapter is the last of this. So every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is explaining a kind of yoga. So everybody knows what yoga means, right? So he was not here in the room, so I'll say it again. Prabhu, if I make any mistakes, please correct.
Please go ahead.
He's one of my teachers. So okay, so in this chapter, 6th chapter, Krishna is explaining a yoga that is particularly difficult. It is called Dhyana Yoga. It means to focus our attention through meditation on the Supreme Absolute Truth. And in the initial verses, in the verses that begin from, the verses that talk about the place, Shuchau Deshe Pratisthapya, the verses that start there, Krishna has explained how the place should be in which you should do your meditation. Okay, I can make it short for you. You cannot do that meditation in Canada because there is no such clean place in Canada. Okay, every place is contaminated. It's horrible. And then Krishna explains how the yogi needs to make his seat. The seat has to be made of kusha grass, and a deer skin needs to be laid on it, and then a cloth needs to be laid on it, and then you sit firmly on it. In other words, when you sit there, you don't move from the seat. So that's another thing. Even if we were to go to such a place where such a meditation is possible, for example, the Himalayas or any other sacred place like Vrindavan, we cannot actually sit like that. It's very difficult for us to sit down for a long time. We get fidgety. It's really hard for us. And then Krishna explains the rules and regulations of brahmacharya. He explains the rules and regulations of how one is supposed to control one's breathing and how one is supposed to control one's attention and bring it back to the focus on the Supreme each time it deviates away. We practically thrive on distractions, right? Our attention span is less than that of little children, right? 30 seconds, we can't prevent ourselves from looking at the phone or some screen or some book or some magazine or something like that, right? So this kind of yoga is very difficult for us. What to speak of us? Even Arjuna said, Yoyam yogam tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatvat siddhim stiram. I am situated in chanchalatvam, which means in constantly changing my mind from one to other. And I cannot do this. I cannot do this. Krishna assures him that, yes, you can do it. Abhyasana to kaunteya vairagyena cha griyate. He assures him. He says, no. I can control the wind with my arrows. I can build a structure that will control the wind, but there is no way I can control my mind. Sorry, I cannot do this. So then, in order to reassure Arjuna, Krishna actually explains to Arjuna that actually you are the highest yogi because you have invested your entire energy in me. And this will be further explained in chapter 12. When Arjuna asks this question, he asks this question as to who is the Supreme, the person who meditates on the formless absolute truth, or the person who engages himself in service to you. So Krishna explains that is the highest. However, there are some important things in these two verses that Srila Prabhupada has brought out through his translations and enhanced. Now, you can learn Sanskrit and you can probably translate the Bhagavad Gita yourself, right? You can probably do that. However, a person who does not fully understand the context of what Krishna was saying to Arjuna will probably mistranslate. For example, Prashanta Manasam, Prashanta. The word Prashanta is translated by Srila Prabhupada as the phrase, you can look into your Bhagavad Gitas if you have them, peaceful, fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. And someone like me, who thought that he knows Sanskrit, comes and says, look, Srila Prabhupada is adding here to Krishna's words. Krishna did not say, fixed on my lotus feet. Where from this Prashanta means, fixed on my lotus feet. So person who thinks that they know Sanskrit or they know how they can translate cannot get the full context. However, a deeper study shows us that Srila Prabhupada's translation is actually most accurate. And why is that? Okay, so let's look at the word Prashanta. Everybody knows the word Shanta, right? Shanta, Om, Shanti, Shanti. Everybody knows this word, right? So Prashanta means, whenever in Sanskrit, whenever the Prakrishta Rupena Shanta, which means in complete Shanta, the complete Shanta, the complete peace. Whenever pra is added to some word, it means incomplete. It's like the full complete, right? So if you want to say bhava, you can say bhava, and when you say prabhava, that is complete bhava, right? When you say whenever you add the word pra to a certain word, it cannot be added everywhere, but whenever you add that word, then it means complete, right? So you can start thinking about complete Shanti, okay? Where from Srila Prabhupada has got fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. He has got it from the previous chapter. The last verse of the previous chapter is what? Bhoktaram yadna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam jnatva mam shantim richati. Which means that knowing me to be the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices, the master of all worlds, a person who completely focuses on me attains complete happiness. Jnatva mam shantim richati. So that's Sri Krishna's peace formula. Everybody focus on me, that's the way to peace. So that's where Srila Prabhupada got it from. So even in Srila Prabhupada's translation, there is a purport. And the purport comes from no other place but the Bhagavad Gita itself. Right? So when somebody is reading the Bhagavad Gita superficially, as I had done before, I've read more than 15 editions of the Bhagavad Gita, by the way, right, from different authors. And every single one of them, unfortunately, are more or less garbage. Because what happened when I read those editions of Bhagavad Gita is I ended up more confused than before. Every time I read a new edition of the Bhagavad Gita, it was mysterious. What is this person trying to do? What is this person trying to say? The problem there was that all these translations, they were also putting their own purports in the translations. But they were putting their own purports in the translation, not Krishna's words. Whereas Srila Prabhupada has very carefully taken Krishna's words and used them in every possible context, wherever they belong. Wherever someone like me, who doesn't understand the full context of the Bhagavad Gita, can now get the full meaning. By wrestling with that, Prashanta, peaceful, fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna, by wrestling with that, it allowed me to see that this Bhagavad Gita is actually none other than Krishna's words, where therefore it deserves to be called as it is. All the other Bhagavad Gitas are this person's Bhagavad Gita and that person's Bhagavad Gita, but they're not Bhagavad Gita, they're that person's Gita. They're not Bhagavad Gita, but this is Bhagavad Gita as it is. Now the next thing is, Krishna talks about Brahma Bhuta. Brahma Bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim lavate param. This is from the 18th chapter. Now Srila Prabhupada goes everywhere. Now, if anybody has studied, greater than the bachelor's program, if you have done those kinds of programs, you will see that if you write a thesis, right, and in the thesis you reference a point from your own thesis, that is illegal, right? That was one of my big questions. How come this Bhagavad Gita is constantly referencing itself? Circular referencing, it's called circular reference. You say A equal to B, right? And in some other place you say B equal to A, and you say A equal to B because B equal to A. In your own thesis, it doesn't apply. You cannot use that kind of logic. It's called self-referential circular logic. You cannot use that. It's not supposed to be appropriate to be used. And if you do that in any kind of master's thesis or any kind of thesis, you will fail, right? The reason why it is so, and this question remained in my mind also for a long time, where Srila Prabhupada is referencing the Bhagavatam in the Bhagavad Gita, and he's referencing the Bhagavad Gita in the Bhagavatam, and he's referencing the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Bhagavatam in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's like circular, and a lot of superficial people, when they first read Srila Prabhupada's books, they said, what's this circular logic everywhere, circular references everywhere? But the key thing here is that you can refer to something that is an axiomatic truth. In other words, if something is spoken by Krishna, whether it is spoken here, or it is spoken there, or it is spoken there, it is supreme absolute truth. Because Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sachidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So if somebody is Sarva Karana Karanam, then that person can afford to use self-referential logic. I can't, because my logic is not perfect and my thesis is not perfect. I'm trying to prove a thesis, based on some other principles. I'm using my own faulty logic or whatever. Therefore, self-referential logic is not allowed for me, but it's allowed for Krishna and someone who is carefully following Krishna. So, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning this Prashanta, and this Prashanta, our acharyas, if you go and start reading the commentaries that Srila Prabhupada relied on, he has summarized in a few lines here, but he has summarized volumes and volumes of wisdom by our previous acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan, Madhvacharya, Adi Shankaracharya even. All of them have written commentaries on this verse that are very deep about each of these words, but we won't go into that level of detail right now. Okay. So the next thing that Srila Prabhupada is mentioning very simply in the purport, self-realization means knowing one's constitutional position in relationship to the Supreme. Okay. One should ask a question. What is this? Krishna has said, thus the self-controlled yogi constantly engaged in yoga practice becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. Where is this loving service to the Lord? Yunjan Nevam, Yunjan, okay, engage in yoga practice. Okay, so if one starts studying these verses, like the verse, the word by word, the translation and the purport, and trying to make sure where what is coming from, we will understand and realize a lot more than just a quick superficial reading of this. So I was reading this ever since I got the verse from Pitamar Prabhu. I was reading this and I was getting some new understandings here. Okay, so that I did not have before. Okay, so self-realization means knowing one's constitutional position in relationship with the Supreme. Where is Srila Prabhupada getting this from? Where is he getting this from? He is getting this from Krishna's own words. Mamai vamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana mana shashthani indriyani pakristhani karshati. So mamai vamsho, constitutional position in relationship with the Supreme. So if I am Amsha, mamai vamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta. We are all jiva bhuta. We are all jiva bhuta. Each and every one of us is a part and parcel of Krishna. Okay. So what is the goal of the part and parcel? If you find a little nut or a screw or a bolt or something somewhere, right? You want to see which part of the machinery it goes into, isn't it? Right? If it's lying around somewhere, a little part lying around somewhere, and you know that this machine is here and this part is here, you're going to try and find out where this part fits. Isn't that true? So therefore, Srila Prabhupada is saying self-realization means knowing one's constitutional position in relationship to the Supreme. It is important for us. Where do I fit? I'm a nut, I'm a bolt, I'm a little piece of machinery, Krishna's transcendental machinery. Where do I fit? What is my purpose in life? So, if I ask myself this question, what is my purpose in life? Why has Krishna put me here? That alone, that one question alone, leads us into what Srila Prabhupada went through, the Prabhupada experience, right? Srila Prabhupada was given one order. If you get money, print books. That was his order, right? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did not say to him, you establish International Society for Krishna Consciousness, you establish hundreds of branches all over the world, okay, you start initiating disciples, okay, you teach the disciples that there's a morning program, that they have to wake up in the morning and they'll sing Samsara Dav. He did not tell them that. Make sure that you set up the 4 regulative principles for all your disciples and their disciples and their disciples and their disciples. Right? Set up this system of Bhakti Shastri. Right? Set up this. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur did not give such detailed instructions to Srila Prabhupada about setting up the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Right? He said, if you get money, print books. Right? From that one instruction, Srila Prabhupada said, if I get money, print books. If I get money, print books. What does that mean? Print books for who? Print books for what? Oh, my Guru Maharaj said in the English language. because most of the world is English speaking, isn't it? Like it's most of the, everybody almost, it's it is probably the most popular language in the world, most influential language as well. Even those who don't speak English also speak English, right? So from that one instruction, the whole thing expanded. So the moment I start thinking about knowing one's constitutional position in relationship to the Supreme, what is my relationship with the Supreme? Okay? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, Jivara Swarupa hai Krishnera Nityadas. I am a servant of Krishna. How am I a servant of Krishna? How can I serve Krishna who does not need my service? Does Krishna need our service? Is he needy? He is missing something? He doesn't need my service. He is self-satisfied. It's Atmaram. Right? There are 64 meanings of that verse, at least given to us by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna doesn't need my service. So who needs my service? I need to serve Krishna. And there are devotees whose service to Krishna will be enhanced if I were to help them a little bit. Right? So maybe someone is making a garland and I come and help them with the petals, because some of these garlands are very intricate. Right? You can take hours to make a single garland. Right? That devotee will love it that I have helped them with the garland. So their garland was more opulent than it could have been otherwise in the amount of time that they had. Right? But does that devotee need my service? No. Who needs my service? I need the benefit that I get from doing that service. So if I start thinking, when we start thinking about this, the individual soul, Srila Prabhupada confirms in the next line, the individual soul is part and parcel of the Supreme, and his position is to render transcendental service to the Lord. What is transcendental? Why should? So if you read the translation of the previous one, verse 27, thus he is freed from reactions to past deeds, right? Why Srila Prabhupada did not say past misdeeds? Why he said deeds? That means that the reactions of things that I have done that will give me karmic benefits, also I'll be freed from. Why is that? Because that, when I am forced to enjoy something that I have earned in the past, that forces me to come back, isn't it? So when I want to clear out the account, it's not just misdeeds that I want to clear out. I want to clear out the account of all deeds. In chapter 4, right, because there was a verse that went, yat karma, kim karma kim akarmeti, kavayopyatri mohita. Is it chapter 7? Yeah, is it 7 or 4? Chapter 7? 7. Chapter 7, sorry. Okay, so, kim karma kim akarmeti. What is good deed and what is bad deed? Kavayopi atra mohita. Even Kavi, even great people with great wisdom, they made it here. Okay, so great people with great wisdom, even they are bewildered by what is good deed and what is bad deed. Because what appears to be a good deed could be a bad deed in disguise. What appears to be a bad deed, Arjuna killing Dronacharya, Arjuna killing Bhishma, appears to be a bad deed, is actually not a bad deed at all. It's transcendental because it's in service to Krishna. So when we go into these in detail and take the time to study it over and over again, the Bhagavad Gita benefits us greatly. And this is just tip of the iceberg. You're far more intelligent, and you will have many more realizations as we read the Bhagavad Gita. So that actually Devamrita Swami Maharaj first told me 20 plus years ago that is a hallmark of a genuinely spiritual literature. What is the hallmark? You will never reach the bottom of it. You can keep reading, and you can keep reading, and you can keep reading, and then you can take this verse and connect it to that verse, and then you can connect this word from this verse to the word from that verse, and you can just keep building all of these amazing networks of knowledge within your consciousness, and your consciousness will continue to get enhanced and purified by this kind of study. So this Bhagavad Gita study is never done, right? Before I met the devotees, I read the Bhagavad Gita hundreds of times. I couldn't get enough of it. Also, I didn't understand most of it, to be honest with you, until I came in contact with the devotees, until I came in contact with my spiritual master, and then I attended the classes in Rupanuga Prabhu's basement for 5 years on the Bhagavad Gita. 5 years, right? We did one verse practically per week, and sometimes more than 1 week. And the whole week I was constantly thinking about what we have studied and what we have read and what we have heard and so on. And still, the Bhagavad Gita is not empty of its treasures. Right? So that's why it's Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopala Nandana. All the Upanishads are cows, and the milkman is Gopala Nandana, Krishna. Gopala is another name for Nanda Maharaj in this case, and then he is the person who is milking these the Upanishads and giving us this knowledge in the form of this Gita Upanishad. So what that means, I want you to reflect on this, is that the Bhagavad Gita is not a static experience. The words of Sri Krishna are very dynamic in the sense that when Krishna is playing his flute, is he playing the same music all the time? No. So through the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will play a different music every time you approach him in the right mood. Right? So this is there. So another important thing is called Brahma Samsparsha. This word says Unjanevam Sadatmanam Yogi Vigata Kalmasha Sukhena Brahma Samsparsham Atyantam Sukham Ashnute. Am I out of time? Do I have time?
6:15.
Okay, so we have some time. I'll conclude here, okay, with this Brahma Samsparsha. Then we will take any comments or challenges or corrections or any questions that anybody might have. Okay, Brahma Samsparsha means touching God, practically speaking. Brahma Samsparsha. And the word sam is used again here. Samsparsha. Sparsha means touching. Samsparsha means completely touching. All encompassing touching. Like Samkirtan. Kirtan is something, and then Samkirtan, Samyak Kirtan. So Samsparsha is used here. That means you can completely touch God. Right? So this process of Bhakti Yoga actually encompasses Dhyana Yoga inside it. All of the different yogas are actually included inside the process of Bhakti Yoga. Srila Prabhupada says that if you two merchants are talking in the stock market, then you don't have to hear their conversation, or even if you hear their conversations, you know that they're talking about business. Okay? The price of this and the value of that and so on and so forth. Right? If you hear two scientists talking, they're talking about some scientific matter. If two lawyers are talking, you can assume that they're talking about some legal matters. Right? So when Bhagavan and Bhakta are talking, even though the Bhagavad Gita is full of the different types of yogas, ultimately they're only talking about Bhakti. Bhakti, Pareshanubhav Virakti. So they are actually talking about Bhakti. This whole text, even though it's Dhyana Yoga, it's actually Bhakti Yoga. And we know how when we engage in Mangalarti, bathing the deity, dressing the deity, cooking for the deity, offering arti to the deity, when you revolve your life around the deity, you know how much time it takes, and you know how it is Dhyana Yoga also. You know it is Dhyana, because you're literally worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord right in front of you. Okay? So I'll conclude there with this and ask if there's any comments, questions, reflections, or challenges.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Prabhupada has given a very beautiful definition here. Brahma Bhuta is the state of being free from material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. But Prabhuji, over here, this is for those people who are already free from the contamination, material contamination. But those who are practicing that, their graph is always like sinusoidal graph.
Mm-hmm.
Though they when they are with the devotees, when they are in the congregation, when they are in the temple room, they are very enthusiastic. The moment they go out, once again they are caught by the contamination, Prabhuji. Once again they fall down.
Mm-hmm.
If I talk about myself, if I don't, I was just talking to him and I said that today I feel like, I was lost somewhere and I came back to my family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But then when we are in that lost state, okay, we are attacked by all these material contamination, Prabhuji, and we fall down.
Mm-hmm.
So why it is happening and how to recover from it, Prabhuji?
Krishna has answered our desire to forget him.
Can you repeat who Krishna is?
Krishna has fulfilled our desire to forget him. Since time immemorial, Bhoga Vancha Kare. So, since time immemorial, the living entity has wanted and tried very hard to forget Krishna. So, Krishna has fulfilled the desire. Because, what is? Matta smriti jnanam upohanam ja. So, forgetfulness also comes from Krishna. Smriti, remembrance of Krishna also comes from Krishna. And the knowledge of how to regain our smriti also comes from Krishna. So now that we are making this desire, sincere desire, to remind, please remember Krishna again, the amount of remembrance will proportionally increase to the degree of our hankering to remember Krishna. Srila Prabhupada gives an example. Actually, Rupa Goswami gives an example. Okay? So, Rupa Goswami sees a boy and girl on the street enjoying some kind of romantic dalliance, some kind of interactions, boy and girl interactions. And immediately he remembers Radha Krishna. But the materialistic person, like for example the hippies who first came into the Krishna consciousness movement, or any other ordinary person walking into the temple, they see Radha Krishna and they're reminded of their romantic dalliance. You understand what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So, why is that? Because their desire is to forget Krishna. Therefore, when they see Krishna, the sight of Krishna allows them to forget Krishna. Because that is their desire. Whereas Rupa Goswami desires to remember Krishna all the time. So when he sees mundane boy and girl thing going on, he remembers Krishna, Radha Krishna. He cannot forget Radha Krishna for a moment. He sees Radha Krishna. He does not see anything mundane. He sees the transcendental nature of the loving pastimes between Radha Krishna, between the gopis and Shri Krishna, between Krishna and his friends. So Rupa Goswami does not remember anything else because Rupa Goswami has desired very greatly hankering to remember Krishna. So just as you are hankering now to remember Krishna, you will see that even in the most mundane of circumstances, you will be able to remember Krishna. In a positive way or a negative way. So negative way means you will see something and you say, this behavior is just like Kamsa. And you will see advanced devotees speaking like that. My Guru Maharaj and Guru Mata were here, and I was driving them all the way to Montreal, Ottawa, and all this stuff. And in the car, the conversation constantly was Krishna. No matter what's happening, traffic jam, Krishna. Alcohol being sold, Krishna is being remembered. How is it possible? It is possible for someone who has desired to remember Krishna so much that they cannot forget Krishna. So Krishna will enable that. So there is no doubt that you will remember Krishna because you desire to remember Krishna. Because Krishna will oblige. He is happy that you are turning towards him. So, and just in order to give us a feeling of what we are missing out on, Krishna will also allow us to forget him and allow us to gain the realization of how hellish life is when we forget him. And in many different ways. He will use all these circumstances to help us. Because Krishna is Suhridam. He's sitting in everyone's heart, right? So he will help. Very good. Any other questions? Clarifications?
Prabhuji, shouldn't we train our mind and intelligence to constantly practice the Krishna consciousness? So, like the question which he asked, we should practice through our mind to constantly remember Krishna, that he is sitting in our heart, and constantly remember him by chanting. So, that will...
So let me ask you a question. This is a question asked by Chaitanya Charaprabhu, was Arjuna chanting Hare Krishna when he was firing his arrows on the battlefield of Kurukshetra?
He was already with Krishna and he has surrendered himself to the
But
Krishna.
how?
Because of the
Was he not calculating the velocity of every arrow coming towards him? Right? Was he not observing that there are 3,000 arrows coming my way? Was he not basically saying which arrow I need to vanquish this opponent? Was he not picking the right arrow? He was picking the right arrow, the right angle, the right delivery velocity. Like, just think about it. Like, just like a modern day artillery specialist, right? When they are calculating the angle, the pitch, the height. Like, there are so many different things they are calculating before they fire their mortars, right? Like their shells. So what I'm trying to say here is that the consciousness of Krishna is not necessarily dependent on the it's dependent on the purpose of it. So if I'm a lawyer or an engineer or whatever I might be, right, or somebody washing pots, etc., right, it's important for me to focus on that task. And at that moment, I might think that I have forgotten Krishna, right? And similar to Arjuna's situation. But the purpose of Arjuna's situation was to obey Krishna's instruction. Krishna said, fight, so I will do my best. Right? So similarly, for us, we might be engaged in making money, for example. We might be engaged in buying and selling different things, commodities, whatever it is that we do for a living. Right? We might be engaged in treating a patient. And if I lose sight, like if I'm a doctor and I'm seeing certain symptoms in a particular patient, if I get lost in my internal ecstasy of Krishna, for example, will I be able to diagnose the patient? I'll do a potentially misdiagnosis. And that will be a problem, right? Because I might lose my license, like all sorts of things can happen, right? So it's important for us to do what we are doing, in the moment. We cannot let go of it and say, I'll chant Hare Krishna in a van. And we have to get in there. But we have to remember what is the purpose of why I'm doing this particular thing. And then when the result comes, I offer it to Krishna. If I do that, then everything that I have done is Krishnaized. Right? Like when I'm driving my spiritual master, right? I have to be careful not to get into any accident, not to put my eyes away from I can't close my eyes and go into some dhyana, right? I can't focus on the tip of my. I have to do my duty. Chariot. I'm a chariot driver. I'm doing my duty. Krishna did the same too. Huh?
Arjuna done the same.
Yes, no. Krishna as the chariot driver did the same. Is what I'm saying. He was devoted to his devotee and Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, for him it's child's play, but for us it's not so easy. That's what I'm trying to say. That yes, we should mold our life before and after you get into the battlefield. We chant Krishna, but in the battlefield, we are fighting. Leave no stone unturned. Like take Hanuman for example, right? See, when he went to Lanka as a messenger, he just destroyed the whole thing and came back. Right? He destroyed it. He was very strategic about where he puts his tail. Right? Touch this, touch that with the fire, like everything. He was very calculated. It was not just randomly just go somewhere, jump around. No, so it was very strategic. Same thing with Arjuna, same thing with every single devotee. When they are doing their thing, they are very focused. And even Srila Prabhupada, right, when he was doing his accounting, he was down to the last paisa. Like not a little bit here and there. Right? But that is Krishna consciousness. That shows up. A devotee is expert. Right? It shows up in their work that they do. Make sense? Thank you. Right. Anything else?
You mentioned initially that when you were getting into this Krishna consciousness, you were questioning with your own intelligence, and then you also made an invitation that just don't follow blindly.
Yes.
He said, go there with the intelligence.
Yes.
Can you share some incidents in your own life? Because I'm asking this because I'm just new to this. I still have the same questions every time I
So
come
for
here.
example, if we see like blind following means do whatever is told to you, right? But that is dangerous because we might not be able to serve a particular devotee properly, right? So blind following means, for example, let's say I'm in the kitchen, okay? Let's say I'm in the kitchen and the cook tells me, just put 5 spoons of sugar in that, right? Or put 5 handfuls of salt in this, right? And I'm like, wait, I would put 5 handfuls of salt, my handfuls of salt, when I was cooking for, let's say, 200 people. But wait, we are only cooking for 35 people here. So should I be following my order giver blindly? No, I should use my intelligence. I should say, I should not put 5 handfuls of salt. I should not say, I followed your instruction. You said 5 handfuls, I put 5 handfuls. And that's a practical and very trivial example, right? But sometimes we might come into a situation where a leader tells us to do something, right? And there's always this constant tension between people and project. When you're in leadership position, there's that tension is always there. You know, the project versus the person, always. You know, and it's very difficult, very very tenuous. So a leader might tell you to do something, but you have to think about what does it do to the people who are inside it, and how can I make sure that they are protected, for example, from any, for example, burning out. Right? Anybody can get burned out. Right? They can work so hard that they don't have anything left to give anymore. So you have to kind of step back a little bit and maybe don't tell that person to do that stuff, and maybe take the flack from the leader because the job wasn't done exactly on time, for example. Right? Those kinds of things. Right? So basically keep your eyes and ears open and constantly measure it against your intelligence. And if the intelligence is not satisfied, then inquire. So my spiritual master can say, do this. And then another moment he can say, do this. And I can say, but Gurudev, you told me to do this. While doing this, I am unable to do that. He says, oh, okay, in that case, when you are doing that, don't worry about this particular thing. And so it's important to not follow without understanding. And the other thing is, if you surrender blindly, then you also leave blindly. Because some charismatic individual can come and influence you to do something. And then some other charismatic individual can come and influence you to do something else. Then where is easy come, easy go? Right? So, but if you have understood everything carefully, by understanding how this is applying to the principles of Krishna consciousness, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, then your surrender might take a little bit longer, few weeks, couple months, whatever, it might take longer, but it will be firmer because you are fully convinced of it. Right? Same thing with receiving initiation from someone. There are so many devotees who come in, you know, wow, they are like, you know, they're almost like, you know, pure devotees in 6 weeks, right? And then they want to get initiated. And then 6 months after they get initiated, they cannot maintain the regulative principles. They affect the health of their spiritual master by committing sinful activities. These are all different examples and it needs to be applied properly. But my spiritual master always said, surrender with your intelligence, not without. In other words, surrender does not mean, not like that. Surrender means I fully understand. Vimbrishchaitat. Krishna himself says, Vimbrishchaitat asheshena yatechase tathapu. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter, Krishna says, consider everything that I have told you. Vimbrishchaitat yatechase tathapu. So you think about it and you do it as you feel is the right thing for you. Do it as you feel is the right thing. Right? And then it was Arjuna's spontaneous individual decision to say, Karishya Vachanam Tava. He was not forced, he was not browbeat. Krishna didn't put a gun to his temple and say, do it, kill these people or else. He did not do that. Right? So Srila Prabhupada said to leaders, especially, he said that the job of the leader is to create a situation where individual, spontaneous, voluntary devotional service can take place. So that's what leaders try to do. Right? They don't push you. They know that something needs to be done, but they don't push people into doing something because they want that individual, spontaneous, voluntary thing to come out. Right? The leaders can, they can make a campaign and build a temple tomorrow. Right? But they want that individual, spontaneous, voluntary thing to come out, so that whenever that temple comes, it will be stable. Right? So that's why they're trying to get that individual, spontaneous, voluntary thing out of everybody, and not. In some cases, if a person is immature, etc., like a child, for example, you cannot wait for individual, spontaneous, voluntary all the time. Sometimes you have to, push. But for a person who is well developed with their faculties, you wait for them to make an individual, spontaneous, voluntary choice to give that service. This is an example. There's one person in a particular place who listened to one very inspiring class, and he wrote $1 million check to that project. He wrote $1 million check. And then, without understanding what the project is about, what the values, what we are trying to accomplish here, etc., right? And then, he began to have doubts. And the doubts manifested as constantly quarreling with the people who are in that project. In the sense that I have given $1 million towards this project, you do as I say. But the other devotees were like, no, Prabhu, if we do it like this is what will happen. Ultimately, it went to such a stage where the devotee says, please take your $1 million and walk out. Because it was not mature. It was like immature. And the person even took it back. Took back the $1 million that he had given to Krishna. Right? So that is immature. That is not with the intelligence. This in the spur of the moment they did something in the mode of passion. So it's mentioned here. He is beyond the mode of passion. In 27? Yeah. Mode of passion means, sweet now, bitter later. And that's how relationships in the modern world are. Sweet now, bitter later. Mode of goodness means bitter now, sweet later. Mode of ignorance means bitter now, bitter later. And transcendental means sweet now, sweet always. So that's what we are trying to aim for. We're trying to see sweet now, sweet always. We don't want it to become bitter. Mode of passion means bitter afterwards. Make sense? Thank you very much. Please read the Bhagavad Gita carefully, and the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada will personally answer all your questions through the Bhagavad Gita. And you will see how it happens when you read it. Please give him an opportunity. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, श्री हरि नाम महामंत्र की जय। थैंक यू वेरी मच।